I'm Connor Old, and welcome back to another episode of Masters of Controlled Chaos. And this month, I'm going to be talking about an influential Australian director that also transitioned to Hollywood to make some classics that you've probably heard of but never knew it was this guy, one of the most undervalued, underrated directors of all time. I'm talking about none other than Peter Weir. So if you guys are new to the series, what I do every single month is I break down a filmographer's career and look at 3 films I think are crucial to their career. And I also look at the central idea of what makes them great and why I think they're a master of controlled chaos. And unfortunately, this month will be the last month before I transition. This month next week, this week, I guess, depending on how you look your Sundays or Mondays, will be the very first episode of Old Oscar Countdown. So that series will be coming back, of course, my signature series. I plan on returning to the series in March or April once the series is over. I mean, right now it's my longest running series so far, and I'm having a blast. It's gone through format changes and whatnot, but I'm really liking how it is right now. And actually, despite, this series is actually so long, or it's been going on for so long, that this director I found by doing research for this series. I knew, of course, the Spielbergs and the David Finchers and whatnot when I started off with, and I learned more about some of the other directors, but I still had known them. But this is the one director that I didn't know anything about. I always look at directors for the series. If I see a movie that I like, I'll see the director and see if he has any sort of similar movies that I like, and I could maybe do a deep dive eventually one day on Masters of Controlled Chaos. But Peter Weir really blew me away. I remember actually finding it. I think it was looking at Master and Commander, that movie, and then seeing that this was this director. And wait, he also did Truman Show and Dead Poets Society, and movies that I'd either seen or heard of that I really enjoyed or were told were really good. So I knew I had to check this guy out and eventually one day sort of look at his filmography, because I had never heard of him, and I found it kind of strange. And that's a big reason why I kind of wanted to do this episode, because I want to talk about some of his movies that I really enjoyed and had an emotional impact with me. But I also want to talk about the brilliance that is Peter Weir, because he's such an undervalued and under-talked about director, and in a lot of ways because of that, this made it one of the most difficult episodes of Masters of Controlled Chaos, because, there aren't really sort of a lot of critical analysis that I can base my research off of, or sort of thoughts or anything like that, because he's sort of underknown, despite him being this director who's created so many great movies and different movies in different genres. So I knew I had to cover him on this movie, but really, when I sort of did my research and my thought analysis, my critical analysis, I found that he's really good at creating relationships and focusing on characters. He creates amazing characters and then really focuses on the relationships and the dynamics between the characters within the world that they're living in. So he focuses on setting and particularly the characters and the relationships. He's sort of known for creating human dramas. I mean, he does different genres, but all of them are sort of analysis of human behavior. And he's not one of these directors that has been talked about in unnecessity, like a Wes Anderson or David Fincher, because of their very distinct sort of visual style and tone of a lot of their movies. There's a direct through line there of a piece of, I guess you can say, but Peter Weir is very much like a Spielberg, but even less so than a Spielberg, where he has no visual style. He sort of prefers to let the sort of the characters do all the heavy lifting and want to tell a good story first and foremost, and then everything sort of afterwards. It doesn't mean he's not focused on the technical aspect, but he changes rapidly depending on what film he's working on. And really going back to the relationships and the characters, you think of some of these movies, you think, how brilliant he's able to do, I talked about last week in Witness, create a romance and understanding of the relationship and sort of the pace of that, with John, Book, and Rachel in Witness. Or you look at sort of him navigating the waters of friendship in Master and Commander, or the relationship that he nails between the teachers and the students in Dead Poets Society, or really almost, I was looking at this idea of relationships, and relationships is almost such a broad term, so I really focus it on sort of the realism and in terms of how people react to situations. I'm never questioning these people's motives. I'm never questioning the sort of reality of these characters. These people are all real people. I've seen these people, I know these people, because there's incredible dialogue, and he knows sort of what sounds good and what sounds real, but he also understands how people work, and the highs and lows of things. It's not just, a falling in love. There are some issues, I guess you can say. I mean, Witness mostly is sort of a falling in love movie, but there's issues with something like a long-standing friendship and sort of trying to deal with that. And I think that because he doesn't write his films, it could be saying, oh, well, he doesn't have that much control over it, which could be an argument. But I think as I'm watching his movies and understanding them, you could tell that he controls so much of the technical aspects, which create so much of the mood, but also the tone and the pacing of the film. I mean, the way he edits his films is a really sort of highlight for me, because as I was sort of looking and reflecting a lot of his movies, he has an amazing scene, at least one, in all of his movies. A lot of times there's 2 or 3, sometimes it's the entire movie, but really you look at sort of a great story structure that he's able to do. He lays the groundwork in such amazing ways through the scenes before the emotional climax of different scenes, of different moments of the film, that the emotional, when it actually finally comes up, it's worth the payoff. We see this in action movies with the big action set piece, but the best action movies, are ones that build up the character so that when they are in negative situations, when the set piece does go off, not only is it visually interesting and well choreographed action, it's also there's an emotional investment because of the characters. And Peter Weir does this, but in sort of a human drama, and we can see this in a climactic sort of way. We see this in any story. There's always a climax, or an important moment of the film, sort of changing of the character, and he makes those moments really impactful and very memorable. I mean, think "Oh, My Catman" in Dead Poets Society. Think about I think in Fearless, when he sort of has that total breakdown with Rosie Perez's character. Max Klein, Jeff Bridges, both Rosie Perez's character, when they drive into that wall. I mean, sort of the insane stuff that goes on in there. Master and Commander, just that sort of amazing speech that goes into the fight. There's these, or the surgery scene in Master and Commander, where the two friends. This is an intimate thing because he feels responsible. Russell Crowe's character compared to Paul Bettany's character. So I think that you look at these moments and it's like, oh yeah, there's these really great moments in a lot of his movies. So I really looked at why he's able to do that, and like I said, he's able to do that by making these really good foundational scenes that develops character and moves the story at an appropriate pace. Howard Hawks had a quote where he said, a good movie is 3 good scenes and no bad ones. And I think Peter Weir sort of adopted a bit of that philosophy, because he doesn't have any bad scenes, but he has these amazing scenes that are memorable. And you could take it one way by saying, oh, it's inconsistent, right? He has these glimpses of brilliance, but he can't really nail it. And I say otherwise, because those moments of brilliance won't happen unless it's the build-up of these sort of trivial sequences, and these trivial sequences work because of his relationship with dialogue and how people react to things. I mean, dialogue's not even the right thing, because you look at Witness, which is very much a reactive kind of a movie, and then Truman Show is very much a satirical thing, which was obviously in the script of both movies. Or The Mosquito Coast has these long monologues, but that's a sort of a Paul Schrader thing. In all of his movies, he's able to understand the dynamics of relationships, the dynamics of family in something like Mosquito Coast, or The World as You Knew It as Truman Show, or the dynamic between teachers and and students as a sort of familial aspect, or just relationships and Green Card, Witness, all different facets of it. He's able to just really control the story in such a unique way that few filmmakers, I think, do. I think just the way the film is edited, the way it moves, the technical aspects, he has such a tight control of the movie that he knows what story he's trying to tell. You could say that he's in different genres, but it really is just sort of a fascination and analysis on human behavior and human dramas that ultimately propel the story and make him this fascinating filmmaker, because he's not someone that has this auteur style, but he's a great storyteller and can work in different genres. And at the end of the day, stories, I think, are what most of the time people connect to. You could have an art film that is purely based on sort of evoking a reaction, an emotion of some sort. But his films are very much looking at sort of a mirror to ourselves, and looking at how we react to certain situations, looking at real people. It's a form of realism, but I wouldn't say it's a fish tank realism or something like that. You know what I mean? It's realism because the world he's established and the settings he's able to create are real. think about the settings. I think about the settings in this movie. Hanging Rock, Hanging Rock. I mean, the set of Truman Show. There's these really integral things because the world he creates is so realistic. I become attached not only to the characters but to the world, and in a way, I get very immersed in these characters' lives, despite it not being this epic sci-fi world that jumps you into it. It's our real world as you know it, but you know these people, you know these situations, and you only can ask, what would happen if I were in that situation? It's a brilliant sort of technique. I think he's totally nailed the sort of structure of a story. And if he can build up those foundational things and really has an amazing sort of idea, or it's in the script of this emotional thing, which happens, I think, in most movies, there's a sort of emotional key point. He can really nail that home and really hit it home where you think the movie wasn't as good as before. When you see that moment, it sort of ties everything together and leaves you on a great note. But now transitioning over into the first movie I chose for him, which is Picnic at Hanging Rock. So I chose Picnic at Hanging Rock because I think it's kind of symbolic of the Australian sort of face of Peter Weir's films. If you don't know, I didn't really look much into the Australian New Wave, but this was at a time pretty much where Australia hadn't really sort of gained international success in terms of their filmmakers, and Peter Weir was one of the most successful filmmakers who came out of that. Someone like George Miller you could also think of. Both using the star of Mel Gibson. Although now I'm thinking, I think, was he in Gallipoli first? I mean, he was also in Gallipoli. Of course, Mad Max, I just can't forget. Maybe he did Mad Max first. Point being that this was a time where Australian film really gained international acclaim and he was able to capture Australia and the landscape never before seen, really, which was such a unique thing for him and for his films, and really on the international playing field. He's an instrumental director and is still known for creating all these great Australian films. And as I learned more about him, I really learned more about him through my exploration of his Australian films, and really understood where he came from, and also understood, before he was the face of this Hollywood sort of great movies, understood where he came from and where his inspirations came from and where he started and how his sort of career evolved. And I think Picnic at Hanging Rock is a great example of this, because it does what a lot of his great Australian films do, which is, like I said, create that landscape. I mean, think of Hanging Rock at Picnic at Hanging Rock, or the town in Gallipoli versus sort of Turkey in Gallipoli, and then think of, this sort of horror town in The Cars That Ate Paris, right? So there's these little things that I think, especially the settings and the location he uses really well and really vibrantly in a lot of ways. And I think Picnic at Hanging Rock is a great example of that, because the excitement of the girls when they first talk about, oh yes, we're going to Hanging Rock, in a way, it's a lot of expression of what they want to do. Sort of, they want to be free, they want to go out, and this is an example of them sort of being able to do whatever they want. So the teachers use this as sort of a reward system for them, and this is a treat in a sense. And we see this as the girls are excited in the carriage going to Hanging Rock, and we see it with a long focus, telephoto lens from a distance. We see the structure, and sort of a little blurry, and then we have sort of these shots at the beginning of the film of it just by itself, just the structure, just understanding the landscape. But really, the structure and the setting is really great about Hanging Rock, but it's really the tone and the atmosphere of this movie that is the thing that's so hard to describe. You just have to watch for yourself. It's its own unique brand of movie, which is so rare to see. It's eerie, it's dreamlike, it's haunting, because it doesn't give you the answers. In a way, because these girls go missing, it makes Hanging Rock the prime suspect. It makes a rock, place a serial killer, and just the alluring nature of it. At the beginning, you see them just sort of at these shots of this rock. Through the later of the movie, you see it as a sort of menacing, demonic figure, and that has a lot to do with just the technical elements of the film. The amazing ghost-like score with the flutes and electronic sort of a little bit of electronic aspect to it, where it doesn't work in Gallipoli, but that's sort of that flute, off-kilter, sort of not orchestral sort of aspect to it really works very well in this movie. it's not electronic, I shouldn't say that. It's like sort of just, it's not orchestral, the point being. It has this really amazing flute in it that I remember from the movie. But then really you have the sort of interesting theme of the movie, the idea of sort of the institution crumbling, the idea that, you know, with the boys, for example, you have the poshness that is set up with this English blended Australian world. You know, England owned Australia, so there is sort of that little bit of element into it. So you have that, and then as they sort of get obsessed with these girls and go more into the woods and try to figure out what happened to them and where they go, and we can help them figure out. I mean, they sort of become more dirty and more sort of. They sort of totally forget about the outside world. They totally forget about the poshness. They forget about rules. Their main objective is finding these girls. They become obsessed with it, and in a lot of ways, you know, that's sort of the way that it was before is totally gone and thrown to the wind because of this event. And then the institution. I mean, we see this with any time the people, the followers don't know what to do. Sort of the leaders, when they don't know what to do, the followers sort of go chaotic. I mean, this is when, you know, at a time these teachers at the private schools were telling these women, you know, how to dress, how to behave, more than just schooling. It was just sort of, this is the rules, this is how you follow them, this is what's right, this is what you do, this is the code. I have the answers. So that when these girls go missing, and there's no evidence, there's no nothing, we don't know where they went, it just makes it more confusing. And when people say, I don't have an answer, we don't know what happened, we don't know why, the people who were fed all these answers really sort of go crazy, and the girls sort of want to know what's happening. This institution, this long-standing institution really crumbles because of this insane event. And I mean, the film is its own brand of horror, which I love so much. It's just the way it's shot in terms of the sort of freeing, flowing, sort of with the dresses, and looking at from a distance, sort of angelic view of these girls, very much turned into sort of like demonic in a sense, in a weird sort of like the devil. I felt was almost a presence because of how there was shot in this sort of very soft edges, right, the lights coming sort of going on their blonde hair, and the dresses flowing in the wind, and them sort of doing what they want, and the freedom of it all, the sort of simplicity and the purity. There's everything, the purity aspect of it. And then when they go missing, and the edges are now sort of jagged, and they're hard, and they're not as soft. It's not a free-flowing place before. I mean, we are really manipulate this. I mean, really, this is ultimately an unsettling film, and unsettled does it do it. All these elements that create this atmosphere that Weir really loves to relish in. And that's the thing, there is confusion. There is no clear right answer. There is no answer. This is what happened. Why? Figure it out. And they make such an unsettling film, and it puts you on edge. It's like, I don't know why. I don't know why I'm interested in this film. I don't know why I go back to this film. I don't know why, but I do. And this is a really unique dichotomy in that way, and I think it really should be commended. But now transitioning over into the second movie I want to talk about, Dead Poets Society. Now, if you want to look at it, 1974, Picnic at Hanging Rock, Dead Poets Society, 1989. That's 15 years from now. Not a lot of directors can actually create films. Some of them have great streaks, like Francis Ford Coppola, but some of them have, you know, these sort of long periods and work in Hollywood. It shows this testament to Peter Weir's amazing, long-lasting career, that the three films I chose today were from 3 different decades, and really 10 years apart each, pretty much, at least. So, you know, I do want to sort of mention the main thing I actually liked about Dead Poets Society. Similar to Picnic at Hanging Rock, like I said, he is great with actors, but particularly the ensemble, the casting of the characters, and then sort of the development of the characters. Particular standouts for me were Robert Sean Leonard and Ethan Hawke, and each of the boys and their sort of camaraderie as a character really worked for me, and I think are one of my favorite aspects of the film, because you're able to have these boys who, because they're at boarding school, don't have their families, and rely on each other for trustworthy friendships as their family, and look as the teacher of Mr. Keating, and as sort of an influential member and sort of a father figure in their lives. And each boy work together as a cohesive unit, because I think it's very relatable. You can look at different aspects of the movie and different people and try to figure out who who you are. I sort of particularly relate to Robert Sean Leonard, but not 100%. No one's a perfect fit of each character. So I sort of took aspects of Ethan Hawke's character and some of the other guys, Meek's character even, for example. So I think that works because it's relatable to all different kinds of people and all different types of people, but they only work well together, I think, as an ensemble, as a unit. There's just these great sequences, the relationship and the friendship between, I'm blanking on his name, because they was called by their last names. Robert Sean Leonard's character and Ethan Hawke's character. They have sort of a great relationship, and then so that really the emotional stakes of the film are so high because they rely on each other so much, so that when the emotional sort of genuine moments happen, they feel genuine, but when the dramatic moments happen, they feel dramatic, and the betrayal happens, they still work. And even when the betrayal happens and sort of the conflict of interest, sometimes they still hang out with each other, still friends. And I think that the cohesion of the unit is so great. And the performances from the guys all around are really fantastic. But I do like one of the hidden themes of the movie, and that the idea of being influence versus institution. The idea of sort of, the film very much takes the thing that Mr. Keating is the good guy and everyone else is the bad guy, and it's sort of black and white in a sense. Although there is a little bit of gray in there that I sort of looked at and analyzed more this time watching around, because Mr. Keating does have a lot of influence. He looks like to be a good man, but he is sort of, can be potentially destructive nature, because he is their only viewpoint, because no one else is reaching out to them at all. He is their only look at the world. And he does say constantly, he's a good influence. I'm not saying that. He says, engineering and math is what you love to do that. But there also needs to be poets. There needs to be both, which he says multiple times throughout the film. There needs to be balance. It doesn't have to be all doctors and lawyers and engineers and bankers. And I think a lot of people, when you're watching as a child or as a teen, maybe understand the sort of pressure from people and relate to it. Like, oh yes, I know school is so important. I have trouble with these people. I understand the different facets of the group. One person was really into the girl, which was like a friend of mine. I was really into the theater, which was like me, or I was really good at school, which was like me. So the different guys represent the different things which you latch onto, and you latch onto through the school aspect. I mean, in a lot of ways, it is a great coming of age movie, a great school movie. So there are certain things that it is definitely overt in some of the senses, and sort of obvious and clunky in certain aspects, and sort of ignores, like I said, some of the influence that Mr. Keating has, and doesn't sort of totally, confront the fact that a lot of his sort of rebellious nature adds to their rebellious nature, which sort of makes them do stupid things at certain times. So he has a great influence over them, and that sort of the consequences of that influence is not necessarily explored well, which is maybe a criticism, but that's also just the reason why I don't really care about it, because of Robin Williams' performance. I mean, he's so brilliant in this movie as Mr. Keating, as this great father figure. This is his first real dramatic role. He had Moscow on the Hudson, which was mostly comedy, and then he had Good Morning Vietnam, which was a mix of, I think, comedy and drama. I think that's maybe his best performance. But yeah, this movie, which is purely dramatic. I mean, you have sort of the recklessness that is with Robin Williams that plays well to the character, but that sincerity that we see, 10 years later with Good Will Hunting, that wins him the Oscar, that really is the heart of a lot of Robin Williams' movies. He has that funny, but he has the heart. He has the genuine nature, the sort of relatability, the earnestness, the honestness, the gentleness that he's able to portray with his acting. Mr. Keating is all that. So that when that "Oh Captain, My Captain" scene happens, it works. There's another scene that happens, I know, 15 minutes before the movie, which I don't think works. But really, as I was watching this movie, I analyzed what exactly it meant to earn an ending. And because "Oh Captain, My Captain," the ending at the very end, really earns it. It's like, yes, that's the ending. Boom, what an ending. How do you earn it? And it is sort of through, like I mentioned, these little building blocks throughout the movie and the relationships. And I think that sort of final event that I won't spoil, that happens 15 minutes before the movie, isn't earned. I think that isn't needed to earn that ending. It doesn't add in sort of my calculations. I think you could have done without it and still have that emotional moment and still for it to work. but really it's the performances all around, the great sort of chemistry, and just the summer camp almost aspect of the boarding school that I really latched onto and really loved. And then of course the amazing sort of brilliant performance by Robin Williams. There are some sort of clunky things, like I said, of the movie, but overall, like, it's hard to talk about this movie not talk about this movie in Weir's career, because it's such a popular movie and it's such a great coming of age movie, and so powerful for a lot of people. It was pretty powerful for me too, so I had to talk about it. And I thought that, you know, just the idea of it and how it's sold and how the emotional moments work. You can't deny that, even if they are some clunky times, they do work. And I think that for a lot of people, this is a very special movie, and I actually recommend it to a lot of young people out there because it is a very relatable movie. And it's not a coming-of-age movie that you have to look back on, like a lot of coming-of-age. I think it's a coming-of-age movie that you can watch at the time and understand the trials and tribulations, and it works really well. Now moving over into the final movie that I really enjoyed, and one of the reasons I decided to do this episode, The Truman Show. And, I mean, the reason why I really want to talk about this director was because I thought he made this masterpiece. He's made other great movies that maybe I don't call masterpieces, but I really want to talk about this movie in particular because of its emotional impact. I saw it the very first time. I was really blown away by it the first time. But really every subsequent rewatch, I really understood the brilliance of the movie and really appreciated it more and more, which is so rare for a movie that had such a strong impression on me for the very first time as well. Just because as I sort of try to pick out problems with the movie, there's always justifications, there's always a reason. And the way the story goes past its premise is almost the brilliance of the movie as a whole, that it's still what he does best, a great premise, but then an emotional, true, honest reflection on human drama. And it's a deeply philosophical movie at times, a deeply funny movie at times. It balances that sort of happy, sad nature to it that I really love about the movie, that's so hard to do, that has a very rare special magic to it. And I think really a great reason why to watch this movie, why I recommend it to everyone, is because, well, the premise is fantastic, and they really use this premise of this guy who, you know, is sort of born into a reality show. We've been watching him for, was it 20 years or something like that? Now he's finally adult, and we're still watching him, and we're so obsessed with the idea of him, you know, not knowing, and this the purely sort of form of entertainment. But really, it's a satire. It's both sort of a movie that you look at and think, oh wow, that's funny, like it's half sad, but then you realize it's a satire, it's holding up a mirror to us. It's of the likes of A Face in the Crowd or Ace in the Hole that really nailed the media's obsession with celebrities and fame, and the idea of media as being a huge thing in our lives, that really the movie becomes more relevant every single day. I mean, the idea of them sort of turning to camera and you know, talking about the coffee beans, and this is an amazing product, or you know, the sort of look at the visionary director behind it all, Christophe. I mean, even the name Christophe is like also pretentious and sort of high class in that sense. It really is a great analytical look at sort of our obsession and sort of overt sort of obsession of these people, and he's just living a normal life. There's no real story to it. It's just the fascination of the really pure entertainment of this is a guy's life. You can watch it. It's pure reality, true reality TV, even though it's all set up and fake and whatnot, right? But really, the movie has to go past its premise. It's not just a premise-based movie. It has an emotional center to it, which is the philosophical sort of reason of what would happen if your world, your entire world, what you knew, came crumbling down. Everything you knew was a lie. You know, I'm a young guy. I'm pretty optimistic about the future. But what if I don't know? I mean, I kind of do realize that I do have sort of pretty good self look at that. I do realize that I don't know what I'm doing. And that the world is a bigger place and I don't know how it works. And I think Truman represents that for a lot of people. It's sort of a young boy who's finally seeing the world for the very first time, and that a lot of the performance sort of relies on Jim Carrey and his ability to react and his ability to look at a movie and sort of look, and through his reactions sort sort of crumble down. He starts as this bright-eyed Truman, everyone loves him, he's happy, and then he's like, wait, what's going on? It becomes conspiratorial in a sense, and it goes down this amazing rabbit hole. And it's happy sad the entire movie, because you're happy because he's finding the truth, but it's sad because this guy's life is kind of crumbling apart. Everything he knows, how is he going to come out of this alive? And then the ending with this sort of the backdrop, and he's finally touching it. It just, this movie is almost more peaceful than, almost, I'd say, a Terrence Malick movie in that ending, this sort of delicate touch it has. It has, like I said, it has that brilliant sort of funny satire, but also has the brilliant aspect of this sort of calm peacefulness that Peter Weir is able to do. We see that Picnic at Hanging Rock, at Witness, at Dead Poets Society, the calmness that he's able to bring in a lot of those movies. I think he does an amazing job at that. And Jim Carrey, this is his best performance because of that ability just to be able to react to it and see sort of this movie, that sort of realization, that crumbling, that you hate to know that he's finding the truth, but he has to find the truth because it is the truth. And it's that emotional center where you can really go down this rabbit hole of what do you know. I just think that the movie is pitch perfect in how it's paced and how it tells its story and how engaging it is and how the performances from all these best actors, Laura Linney, Ed Harris, some of the best of their careers, because Paul Giamatti has a good little part there, just because of the idea of the central thought and sort of concept of the film, but the emotional center of the movie that the film and Peter Weir really nails home. Throughout Peter Weir's career, people have always credited him to the screenwriter. He worked with Paul Schrader. I want to say Andrew Nichols did the screenplay, but I'm not entirely sure if that's a name or if that's a person or if that's true. But they always sort of resort to him. The screenplay always wins. Witness, the screenplay. Dead Poets Society, the screenplay. Green Card, the screenplay. It's never him for his directing. I think the screenplay, yes, well, it's brilliant, it's a great idea. There's these great little satirical moments that are definitely built into it. It's the emotional attachment. It's the way the score builds. At the very end, as he's sort of going throughout the end, and there's this sort of media chase, and at the very end where the media aspect of the film falls to the side, and it's about the emotional connection. It's about this character of Truman who's discovering something for the very first time, and he doesn't know how to feel about it, and we don't know how to feel about it. And it's the ultimate movie, Peter Weir movie, because like all of his movies, he puts us in that situation of what would I do. It's one of my favorite movies is what would I do if I were in this situation, while balancing that sort of perfect blend and that perfect tone that I love and I always relate to. And I think it will give you an emotional response even if you don't like the movie. I think you'll definitely feel for the characters and understand the plight. It's just really a beautiful meditation on what it means to be human and what it means to be alive, what's real and what's important to you. And also being sort of a brilliant satire on media, which is so relevant today. I highly recommend it really to everyone who's watching this episode. It's an amazing, amazing movie. That's about it. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Give Peter Weir's movies a shot. They're really good. They're a lot of fun. That's about it. Hope you guys stay tuned next week this week, I guess, for Old Gloucester Countdown coming back. That should be a lot of fun. And until next time, stay tuned.